I never expected a single voice message to shatter the world I thought I knew. My phone buzzed late that night, the kind of late that feels too quiet, too heavy, like the universe is holding its breath. When I saw it was from my daughter, I assumed it was the usual "I'm home safe" or "don't forget to pick up" kind of message. But the tone of her voice the moment I pressed play made my blood freeze. Her words weren't meant for me. They weren't meant to be heard by anyone but her husband. And yet, here I was, listening to the most private, intimate confession she had sent across a distance of just a few miles. She laughed softly at first, a sound I had always thought of as pure, innocent. But that laugh was different. It trembled, almost nervous. And then the words came, words that made my heart pound and my hands shake. I tried to stop the message. I really did. But my thumb froze over the screen. I couldn't, because the moment I pressed pause, the truth would be suspended, lurking in my imagination, growing darker with each passing second. And then I heard it, the kind of truth no parent ever wants to stumble upon. It wasn't just about a secret, not a trivial little thing that could be ignored. It was about betrayal. It was about lies that had been quietly woven into the life I thought my daughter and her husband were building together. It was about choices that would change everything. I sat down heavily on the edge of the couch, my chest tight, the air thick in the room, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic outside, the clock ticking. Everything felt unbearably loud. The message played again in my mind. Even though my phone was off, even though I had put it down, her voice haunted me. I had raised her to be honest, to be kind, to believe in the goodness of people. And yet here she was, confessing something that I could barely comprehend. Something that made me question everything I thought I knew about the life she was living, the person she was becoming, and the choices that had led her to this moment. I remember pacing the living room, gripping the edges of the sofa, my mind spinning. Should I confront her? Should I wait? Should I even tell her husband? Every option felt like a trap, a potential disaster waiting to unfold. And yet, the most terrifying thing wasn't the message itself, it was what it represented. The moment I realized that my daughter was growing into a world I didn't control, where secrets could fester and love could be tested in ways I couldn't prepare her for. Hours passed. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I couldn't stop replaying the sound of her voice, the laughter that masked fear, the tremble in her words. And then, finally, I knew what I had to do. I couldn't pretend I hadn't heard it. I couldn't let this moment pass without facing it head on, without trying to guide her, to protect her, to maybe save her from a mistake that could haunt her for years. I called her, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. When she answered, the sound of her voice made my stomach twist. She sounded tired, worried, but unaware of what I knew. And yet, I had to start somewhere. I had to begin the conversation that could either save everything or shatter it completely. Sweetheart, I said, my voice softer than I thought it could be. We need to talk. There's something you need to tell me, and I need to hear it from you. There was silence on the other end. And then, the first crack in the armor of her perfect composure, a sigh, a pause, a quiet admission that I couldn't quite hear but knew was coming. I braced myself, because I understood that from this moment forward, nothing would ever be the same. I thought of the life we had shared, the mornings I woke her up for school, the nights I stayed up listening to her fears and dreams. I thought of every birthday, every scraped knee, every whispered secret she had ever trusted me with, and I realized that love, no matter how strong, could sometimes lead to pain, to choices that test every fiber of who we are. The night stretched endlessly. Words were exchanged, tears fell, confessions were made, and I held on to the fragile hope that honesty could still save us, that my daughter, the girl who had once trusted me with her heart, could find her way back to truth, even in a world that constantly tempted her with lies. By the time dawn broke, I felt drained but strangely alive, because I had heard the truth, I had faced it, and I had acted not out of anger, not out of judgment, but out of love. And as I watched the first light creep into the room, I realized something that no parent ever wants to admit, that the moment you hear a truth you weren't meant to, the world shifts forever. You can't go back, you can't unhear it, but you can choose what to do with it. And in that choice lies the real power, the power to forgive, to guide, to protect, and maybe, just maybe, to heal. The next morning, the sunlight felt harsh, too real, almost accusing. I sat at the kitchen table, the mug of coffee in my hand gone cold, untouched, as I replayed every word of the voice message in my mind. I couldn't stop thinking about the way her voice trembled, the subtle pauses that betrayed the unspoken fear behind her laughter. That message had been a window into her life, into secrets she hadn't shared, into choices I hadn't known she was making, into struggles that were quietly consuming her. Asterisk, I tried to reach her again, but her phone went straight to voicemail. My heart sank. The thought of her struggling alone, keeping things bottled up, made a cold knot form in my stomach. And yet, I knew confronting her too aggressively could push her further away. I had to tread carefully. Every parent knows that. The line between protecting and overstepping, between guiding and smothering. And that line was razor thin tonight. Asterisk, I remembered the way she used to confide in me as a teenager, the way she would spill her heart about school, friendships, boys. She trusted me then, but now she was an adult. Her world was bigger, more complicated, and the mistakes she made would not just affect her, they would ripple through every life she touched. I knew that the path forward was not punishment or anger, but patience, understanding, and the courage to face the truth together. Asterisk, hours passed. I tried to focus on work, on cleaning, on anything that could distract me, but my mind kept wandering back to her words. And then I realized something that made me almost fall to my knees. Her voice message wasn't just about betrayal. It was about desperation, about fear, about someone trying to navigate a storm she couldn't handle alone. And suddenly, the anger I had felt was replaced by something heavier, more urgent, compassion. Asterisk, I left a note for her husband, gently asking him to stay home for the evening. I didn't want to reveal too much, but I needed him close. Not because he deserved the secret I had uncovered, but because, together, we could be her anchor. And then I sat by the window, staring at the street, waiting for her to come home. Every car that passed made my heart race, hoping it would be her, hoping that whatever choice she had made, it wasn't irreversible. Asterisk, when she finally walked in, the door closing behind her seemed to echo louder than I expected. She looked tired, worn down, and something in her eyes told me she had been holding back tears for hours. I didn't speak immediately. I let her set the pace. Sometimes silence is louder than words, and tonight it needed to be. Asterisk, finally, she collapsed on the sofa, burying her face in her hands, and then, in a voice barely audible, she whispered, "Mom, I didn't mean for it to go this far." Asterisk, the words hit me like a punch to the chest. That simple confession carried so much weight. I moved closer, sitting beside her, and took her hand in mine. It was trembling. Her entire body seemed to be shaking, as though the burden she had been carrying alone for weeks or maybe months was finally surfacing. Asterisk, you don't have to explain everything right now, I said softly, but I need you to know that you're not alone. Whatever happened, we can face it together. Asterisk, she looked at me, eyes glistening with tears. And for the first time since I had heard that message, I saw relief, not just fear. She began to speak, haltingly at first, revealing secrets I never imagined she would share. Mistakes, confessions, regrets, moments where she had felt trapped between love and fear, loyalty and honesty. Each word was a dagger and a balm at the same time, painful but necessary. Asterisk, as she spoke, I realized something profound. The message I had accidentally overheard wasn't the end of trust, it was the beginning of a deeper truth. The real test of love, of family, wasn't in perfection, but in how we respond when perfection crumbles. Taught Asterisk by the time she had finished. Night had fallen. The room felt smaller, more intimate, as though the walls themselves were listening. I could feel the weight of the conversation settling over both of us, and yet, beneath the heaviness, there was hope, a fragile, flickering hope that honesty could rebuild bridges, that mistakes could be forgiven, that love, even when tested, could endure. Asterisks, we talked for hours. We cried, we held hands, and slowly she began to understand something I had always hoped she would learn on her own, that life is full of choices, and some choices are hard, painful, even devastating. But the power to face them, to own them, to make amends, lies within each of us. The moment we choose truth over fear, action over avoidance, courage over despair, we reclaim the power to shape our own story. Asterisk, by the time she went to bed, there was a quiet determination in her eyes. Not everything was fixed, not every mistake was erased, but the path forward was clear. And for the first time since that fateful message, I felt a deep, unwavering sense of peace. Because I had acted not out of judgment, not out of anger, but out of love. And love, I realized, was stronger than any secret, any betrayal, any fear. Asterisk, that night, I lay awake thinking about the fragility of trust, the resilience of the human heart, and the courage it takes to face the truths we wish we could ignore. And in that reflection, I understood something that would stay with me forever. That sometimes the most difficult moments, the moments that shake us to our core, are the ones that shape us, that teach us, that remind us of who we are and what we are capable of enduring and overcoming. The days that followed were tense. There was a quiet unease in the house, a fragile tension that seemed to hang in the air like fog. I could see it in my daughter's eyes, the mixture of fear, shame, and determination that comes when someone is finally confronting the truth they've been hiding. Her husband sensed it too, though he didn't know all the details, and that created a delicate dance of suspicion, patience, and quiet observation. Asterisk, every interaction felt loaded. Every glance, every word seemed to carry weight far beyond what it should. I found myself walking on a tightrope of emotions, trying to balance honesty with protection, accountability with compassion, because the message I had overheard was not just a single event. It was a symptom of choices, patterns, and decisions that had built up over time, quietly shaping the person my daughter had become. Asterisk, one afternoon, I noticed her staring out the window for hours. Her hands were fidgeting, her lips moving silently as if she was rehearsing words she didn't yet have the courage to say. I approached her slowly, careful not to startle her. "You don't have to face it all at once," I said gently. "Step by step. One truth at a time." Asterisk, she turned to me, tears glistening but defiance in her gaze. "Mom, I can't undo what's been done. I can't pretend it didn't happen. And I don't know if he'll ever forgive me." Asterisk, her voice was raw, vulnerable, carrying the weight of a storm she had weathered alone. I took her hand and held it firmly. "Forgiveness is a journey, not a gift. It starts with honesty. You've already taken the first step. Now it's time to face the consequences and decide what you want your next step to be." Asterisk, the following week brought more challenges than I had anticipated. Her husband, confused and hurt, began to uncover fragments of the truth's small inconsistencies, subtle hints, and fleeting moments that didn't add up. I could see the tension building between them, the strain in every conversation. But instead of pushing her away, these moments forced her to confront herself, to analyze her decisions, and to make choices she had been avoiding. Asterisk, one evening, I overheard a heated conversation between them in the living room. I didn't intervene, because I knew this was a necessary part of the process. Anger, disappointment, and frustration were all surfacing, uncomfortable, yes, but necessary. And through it all, I realized that my daughter was learning something crucial. That facing the truth, no matter how painful, was the only way to reclaim control of her life. Asterisk, days turned into nights, and nights into long, reflective mornings. My daughter began to journal, pouring her thoughts, fears, and regrets onto paper. She cried openly, screamed silently into pillows, and sometimes just sat quietly, staring at the ceiling as if searching for answers in the patterns of the stars. And slowly, imperceptibly, a transformation began. Asterisk, she started making just with words, but with actions, small gestures that spoke louder than explanations, a phone call to apologize, a thoughtful note to acknowledge a hurt, a commitment to change behaviors that had caused pain. And in witnessing this, I realized the depth of human resilience. Even when faced with mistakes that could have defined a lifetime, a person can choose to rise, to rebuild, and to heal. Asterisk, there were moments of doubt. Moments when she wanted to run, to hide, to pretend nothing had happened. But each time, she returned to the truth. Each time, she remembered the lessons we had spoken about, the strength that comes from courage, the growth that comes from accountability, the love that survives when honesty prevails. As her husband's anger began to soften, slowly, like ice, melting in the morning sun. Trust wasn't restored overnight, but the foundation was being rebuilt, brick by brick, with sincerity and effort. And as I watched this unfold, I understood something profound, the real power of a single moment. The voice message that had shaken me to my core was not in its ability to destroy, but in its ability to catalyze change. Asterisks, by the end of the month, our household had shifted. The tension remained, but it was tempered by understanding. The secrets that had threatened to fracture us had instead become lessons, guiding us toward honesty, empathy, and deeper connections. And my daughter, once hesitant, fearful, and burdened by guilt, began to reclaim her voice, her confidence, and her sense of self. I realized then that life is rarely about perfection. It's about resilience, courage, and the choices we make. When faced with the consequences of our actions, mistakes don't define us. Our response to them does. And in seeing my daughter confront the truth, own her decisions, and take responsibility, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride. Not pride in perfection, but pride in courage, growth, and the power of honesty. And as night fell again, I sat by the window, reflecting on the journey we had begun the night of that voice message. A journey that had started with fear, confusion, and uncertainty, but was evolving into something far greater. A story of redemption, strength, and the enduring power of family. The following weeks felt like walking through a storm. Every day brought a new challenge, a new confrontation, or a new reminder of how fragile trust can be. My daughter had begun to face the full consequences of her choices, and her husband's patience was being tested in ways I had never anticipated. There were moments of explosive anger, moments where tears flowed freely, and moments so quiet and tense, it felt as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. One evening, I found her sitting in the dark, her phone glowing with messages she hadn't yet opened. The uncertainty, the fear of judgment, and the weight of guilt had settled on her shoulders like a physical burden. I sat beside her, hesitant, not wanting to intrude, yet needing to be there. You don't have to face this alone, I whispered. Whatever happens, we'll get through it together. Her voice was barely audible. Mom, what if I've ruined everything? What if the trust is gone forever? What if he never looks at me the same way again? I held her close. Then we rebuild, slowly, carefully, brick by brick. Trust isn't destroyed by mistakes, it's destroyed by silence. But you're being honest now. You're taking responsibility. That matters more than perfection. At night, the truth began to spill further. She confessed details I had not expected, decisions she had made without thinking of the consequences, moments of weakness, and choices that had tested the very foundation of her marriage. Each confession was a dagger to the heart, yet at the same time, it was a balm, a release of the weight she had carried in secret for too long. Her husband's reaction was a mixture of disbelief, hurt, and a flicker of hope. He asked hard questions, demanded honesty, and forced her to confront realities she had avoided. I watched from a distance, careful not to intervene unless necessary. This confrontation, as painful as it was a turning point. The truth, finally exposed, had the power to destroy, but also the power to heal. There were nights of silence, nights when neither spoke, both lost in thoughts that twisted and turned in endless loops. But slowly, gradually, small steps to reconciliation began, an apology offered with sincerity, a gesture of understanding, a moment of vulnerability that reminded them both why they had chosen each other in the first place. I realized then that the voice message, the moment that had thrown me into chaos, had done something remarkable. It had forced my daughter and, by extension, all of us to confront reality, to see the cracks in our lives, and to work deliberately toward repair. The secrets may hide pain, but honesty exposes the path forward. And as I watched my daughter navigate this storm, I understood something fundamental about growth. Courage isn't the absence of fear. but the decision to act despite it. Asterisk one particularly tense evening. My daughter sat with her husband at the kitchen table. I could hear the conversation from the next room, every word carefully measured, every pause weighted with meaning. And then something shifted. The anger in his voice softened, replaced by an understanding born not of complete forgiveness, but of recognition that love, when tested, can endure. Asterisk they spoke for hours, confronting the past while cautiously imagining the future. There were tears, yes, and frustration, and heartbreak. But there was also honesty, empathy, and the fragile beginnings of trust rebuilding itself. And I knew that this moment, this long, excruciating confrontation, was a turning point. Asterisk, by the time they stood to leave the kitchen, a subtle calm had settled over the house. Not everything was fixed, not every mistake erased, but the foundation for something stronger had been laid. I could see it in my daughter's eyes, the spark of determination, the sense of accountability, and the quiet pride in facing the truth. Asterisk that night, I lay awake reflecting on the journey we had endured. From the instant I overheard that voice, message to this point, every moment had been a test of courage, patience, and love. And through it all, I had realized that life's greatest lessons often come wrapped in pain. We are forced to confront truths we would rather ignore, to face choices that terrify us, and to grow in ways we never imagined. Asterisk, and yet, in all this struggle, there was hope. Hope that mistakes could become lessons. Hope that honesty could heal wounds. Hope that love, tested in fire, could emerge stronger. And most importantly, hope that my daughter had learned that facing the truth, no matter how painful, was the most powerful choice of all. Asterisk as dawn approached, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold, I felt a quiet satisfaction. Not in perfection, not in a life free of mistakes, but in the resilience of the human spirit, in the courage to confront darkness, to own our choices, and to find light in even the most unexpected places. Asterisk, and as I watched the first rays of sun illuminate the living room, I knew one undeniable truth. Sometimes, the moment you never wanted to witness, the secret you weren't meant to hear, becomes the catalyst for growth, redemption, and transformation. And in that moment, we discover the extraordinary strength hidden within ordinary lives. The days after the confrontation were different. The house no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like a space of possibility, fragile but real. My daughter moved with a new awareness, a quiet confidence born from facing the truths she had long avoided. She had discovered that the greatest courage lies not in avoiding mistakes, but in acknowledging them, taking responsibility, and striving to rebuild what was broken. Asterisk her husband, too, changed. The anger that had once dominated their interactions had softened into understanding. He listened now in a way he hadn't before, truly hearing her regrets, her fears, and her commitment to change. Trust, fragile as it was, began to reconstruct itself, not instantly, but brick by brick, through honesty, vulnerability, and effort. Asterisk one evening, I sat with her in the quiet living room, the soft glow of the lamp casting long shadows across the floor. She held my hand, squeezing it lightly, and for a moment, I could see the girl I had raised and the woman she was becoming simultaneously. Asterisk Mom, she said, voice steady but emotional. I was so scared. I'm scared of losing everything, scared of disappointing everyone, scared of facing myself. But now I feel like I can breathe again, like I've finally taken control of my life. Asterisk, I smiled, tears brimming in my eyes. Sweetheart, you did. You faced the storm instead of hiding from it. That's what matters. That's true strength. Asterisk, in the weeks that followed, small but meaningful changes unfolded. She communicated openly with her husband, shared responsibilities honestly, and made a conscious effort to rebuild their life together. Each step forward was a testament to resilience and courage, a reminder that no mistake is too great to overcome when met with accountability and love. Asterisk, I realized something profound during this time. Life doesn't always give second chances, but it always offers the opportunity to act differently, to grow, to transform pain into lessons. My daughter had stumbled, yes, but she had also risen. And in that rising, I saw a reflection of something universal, the human capacity for redemption, for courage, for love stronger than fear. One morning, she called me into the kitchen. "Mom," she said, placing a carefully written note in my hand, "I want you to read this when I'm gone for a bit. I want you to know I'm not the same person I was a month ago. I'm stronger, I'm wiser, and I'm grateful for you, for him, for everything that happened, even the painful parts. They taught me who I really am." I unfolded the note, reading every word carefully. Her handwriting trembled slightly, a human mark of imperfection, yet the content was powerful, deliberate, and honest. It was a declaration of growth, a recognition of responsibility, and a promise to herself to live a life guided by truth. In that moment, I understood the deepest lesson of all. The moment we face what we fear most, the moment we confront the secrets we would rather hide, we step into a version of ourselves capable of extraordinary strength. We learn that mistakes, though painful, are not failures, they are catalysts for growth. I hugged her, holding her close as she whispered, "Thank you, Mom, for listening, for guiding me, for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." And I realized that sometimes the most powerful moments in life are the ones we never expected. A voice message meant for someone else, a secret accidentally heard, a choice confronted under pressure, they can all become turning points, shaping the trajectory of a life in ways we never imagined. Her journey wasn't over. It never is. Life is full of tests, challenges, and moments of uncertainty. But she had discovered a truth that would carry her forward. Honesty, courage, and love are stronger than fear, stronger than guilt, stronger than any mistake. And with that truth, she was unstoppable. As I watched her walk toward the door that evening, ready to step back into her life with a newfound strength, I felt an overwhelming sense of hope. Hope for her, hope for all of us. Because no matter how dark a moment may seem, no matter how devastating a secret may feel, there is always a path forward, a path illuminated by courage, honesty, and the power of the human heart to heal, grow, and thrive. And in that realization, I understood something timeless and profound. Life's most unexpected trials often become the greatest teachers. And sometimes, a single, unintentional moment, a message, a word, a revelation can ignite a transformation more powerful than we ever imagined possible.